right, brothers and sisters, there is a pastor at a church, and he stood before his congregation, and he said, guys, I have 3 news for you. 1 bad, 1 good, and 1 bad. And everyone's like sitting in anticipation. And he says, the first bad news is that the church needs to get a new roof, and it's going to cost a lot of money to repair. And he just hears a grumbling along the congregation, like, oh man, I thought we just fixed it 3 years ago. And then he's saying, but wait, there's good news, guys. The church has the money to cover the repairs. And everyone's like, woo! And then the last bad news is that the money's still in your pockets. So obviously the topic today is the topic of money and being a good steward. And the sermon tonight is going to actually be kind of 3 parts. The first part is going to be about just the topic of stewardship in general. What does stewardship mean according to the Bible? The second topic is going to be more of the spiritual aspect to money and being a steward over it. And the last part is going to be the practical steps when it comes to being a good steward of our money. So if you guys can, please open up your Bibles to Matthew chapter 25, starting from verse 14. Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. And this is the parable, or the story, of the talents. Now, I do want to say one thing, though, guys. A talent, and probably most of you guys know this, but just to clarify, a talent, when Jesus talks about a talent, he's not talking about like a skill or an ability, or like America's Got Talent. You know, it wasn't Israel's Got Talent. That's not what it was about. It was about a sum of money. The talent is an amount of money. Think of it as we read this story, think of it as, when he says the word talent, think of it as $1 million. It was a lump sum of money. And another thing is that verse 14, it says, where's verse 14? It says, for it will be like. And what that is Jesus is referring to the kingdom of heaven. He's saying, for the kingdom of will be like, okay? So chapter 25, Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, and to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug it into the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. And his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has been given, for everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Very powerful parable, because it talks about a lot of extremes. You know, there's the extreme of the reward, and there's the extreme of punishment. Now, what I want to do about this parable is very good at describing what is the definition of biblical stewardship. What does it mean to be a good steward? What does it mean to be a bad steward of what God has entrusted us? So I want to kind of pull 6 points out of this parable. That's going to be the first part of the sermon. I'm going to talk about just stewardship in general, not related to money. Stewardship in general, 6 points. First point, a talent was worth, for example, say an average worker back in those days try to earn a talent of money. It would take that worker 20 years to earn 1 talent. That's assuming he didn't spend money on food, on rent, on gas, or whatever they needed for the camels. It was 20 years of collecting. So that means over the average worker's entire lifespan, they would only earn a total of about 2.5 to maybe 3.5 talents total. So I guess my point is that even 1 talent of money is a crazy amount of money. It's not like, don't think of it as like dollars, like Freddie got $5, Johnny got $2, and Luke got $1. He's like, go try to do something out of that. Well, of course you're not going to do anything with $1 because it's just $1. But in reality, a talent took over 20 years, and basically an average worker would never be able to collect up enough money to have a talent. So the very first point is that everyone received a large sum of money, and I'm going to build on this a little bit later. The next point from here is defining stewardship. Who here has a slight idea about what stewardship is? I know it's kind of a new word, right? We're about to add that to our vocabulary, right? Stewardship is somewhere in between the idea of owning something and renting something. Now, we know when you own it, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. You could not do anything you want with it. It's totally up to you, right? You can break it because you bought it already. You can do anything. Whereas renting, it's you are getting it from somebody and it doesn't belong to you, but you're not really responsible for it because, when you get that rental car, you don't care if it gets scratched. You don't care if it has a flat tire. You just roll it in and tell them as a matter of fact, by the way, we were jumping on that tire and it popped, so go ahead and replace it. You guys see the complete differences? On the car that you own, you will never do that because you own it, because it's yours, ultimately. When you rent it, you don't really care about it, but you don't have the benefits of owning it. And stewardship is somewhere in the middle where it doesn't ultimately belong to you, but you treat it as if you own it. And now you might think, well, that doesn't sound like a good deal at all. It's like double negatives makes a positive or something. The great thing about stewardship is that when we, for example, say you are made a steward of something, that means you are entrusted with something that you would never have been able to make on your own. You're entrusted with something that you would never be able to attain to on your own, and you're able to use that something that you've been entrusted with to make so much more. These average workers, there is no way they would have ever made 5 talents in a span of time, not even, in their life, not even speaking about a span of time. You guys follow me? That's the benefit of stewardship, is that it's something you didn't deserve, it's something you didn't earn, you didn't work for. It's something that's entrusted to you. It doesn't belong to you, but you have the opportunity to use it to make something much bigger of it. So that's what stewardship is. So point number 2, stewardship is somewhere in between renting and owning, but it's more awesome because you never deserved it, but you get to use it. Point number 3, this parable is about us, guys. I'm sure everybody's seen this coming, but the reality is we have all been given something. I want you to think about your lives right now. We have all been given something or some things that is from God and that we ought to glorify God with. Think about this. None of us here, for example, asked to even be alive. None of us even asked to have a body, and yet God has given us these amazing gifts. God has given us certain things, and we ought to use it to glorify Him with it. For example, God has given us time, He's given us money, skills, abilities, talents, 21st century talents, friends, family, relationships, connections, positions, jobs, opportunities, bodies, minds, emotions. God has given all these things to us, and we are good stewards of them because they ultimately don't belong to us. It's not like you earned your body. I mean, how do you even imagine earning your own body? You can't, right? It's just complete gift, and it's something that's been entrusted to you, actually. Point number 4, and I love this point right here. Point number 4 is that God only expects from you guys what he has entrusted to you. Now, let me explain why this is both very freeing and very scary at the same time. Do you guys ever have that struggle where you're like, oh man, this person's like doing this for God and I'm not doing that? You guys know what I'm talking about? Where you see somebody and they're like doing all this for God and you're like, oh man, I wish I could do it, but you can't do it. And so you just keep feeling more guilty. But you know what the reality is? The awesome thing that this parable teaches us is that God does not expect from us the same thing that he expects from someone else. God only expects from us what he has given to us. Think about this. Both the servant that made 5 talents and the servant that made 2 talents. Both of them brought it, and both of them received the same approval, and both of them basically entered into the joy of your master. He didn't say, enter into the joy of your master, level 5, and then enter into the joy of your master, level 2. He didn't say any of that. It was the same exact award, a reward for being a good steward, because God understands, this guy gave 5, this guy gave 2, and from this guy I expect only 2, and from this guy I expect 5. So what that's awesome is like, I don't know, for me it's liberating, because that tells me I don't have to join a band. I don't have to sing and do a solo, because you guys all know that. I completely suck at singing. I'm tone deaf, and that's why I always sit on the corner seat where nobody can hear me. And what's awesome is I don't even have to feel guilty about, like, oh, should I be glorifying God by going to choir? No, I know that for sure. I don't need to go to choir. I have a really good reason, and I know God's not going to be upset with me. And it's the same thing with you guys. Maybe there's some things that God hasn't given to you, and that's okay. That's not a big deal. Not everybody has to be a preacher. Not everybody has to be a teacher, a speaker, a worship leader. But this is also scary, because that means you have all also been given something that other people haven't been given. And if you don't take advantage of that, then for you, it becomes sin. Because James, the letter of James says, oh man, I'm jumping into the next point. Whatever, I'll jump in. Point number 5, stewardship is not optional. If you don't take advantage of what God has given to you, it's called the sin of omission, or the sin of not doing what you know is right. James says, for he who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin. So if God has given you a talent and you're not doing it, you're not taking advantage of whatever God has given you, your opportunities, guys, that is a sin. The reality is, point number 5, stewardship is not optional. Think about this, the guy that received 1 talent. You might think, man, that's kind of cruel. He didn't steal anything from the master. He didn't, take a little bit. He didn't even damage it, nothing. He returned it exactly as it was. It's like, hey, can I borrow your car? Yeah, sure. And you bring the car back. It's like, dude, why doesn't it have rims on it, man? I'm putting you in jail, right? That's not what it is in this case, because it's stewardship. And when we're entrusted with it, we're expected to take advantage of the opportunities that we have been given. Because it talks about, basically it relates to the topic of opportunity cost. Now, you guys think that economists were the ones that came up with the theory of opportunity cost? It's not. It was in the Bible a long time before any of those economists existed. Let me see where it talks about that. Verse 27, he tells the slothful servant, he says, then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received what was my own with interest. Jesus was a smart guy, and he knew about investing, and he knew about interest. And he knew that if I put my money into this bank, I'll only get $10 back, and if I put my money into this bank, I'm going to get $20 back. And Jesus says, I want to go for that place that's going to give me the most bang for my buck. And basically, if you put it into simple terms, when we don't take advantage of the opportunities that God has given us, it's literally, it's an opportunity cost, and it's like basically God is saying, and I know God has infinite resources, but the whole point in this parable is like, I gave you this, you didn't take advantage of it. I should have given it to the other guy who would have used that talent to make another talent. Do you guys follow me? If we don't take advantage of the opportunities that God has given us, it's not just giving back what's yours, it's actually stealing almost from God, because God could have given it to someone else and they could have used it for His glory instead of it being wasted in our life. And now you guys might think, like, wow, stewardship is kind of scary. It is kind of scary. But I want to ask you guys the question, what opportunities, and ask yourself this, what opportunities is God giving you? And it can be anything. It's not even related to money. Just what opportunities is God giving you to glorify Him in your life? And are you taking advantage of those opportunities? Are you going like the guy that received the 5 talents and just trading and literally hustling with it to make more talents for God's glory? What opportunities is God giving you in your life today? Not like tomorrow, like in Zimbabwe, Africa, or something like that, I'll be a missionary. But today, who are the people around you? What is the situations that God is putting you in that you're not taking opportunity of? It's a very serious question. And I know you guys are probably thinking, man, I don't want this whole stewardship thing. It's kind of scary. But the reality is, guys, it's totally worth it. And that's point number 6. The last point of this part of the sermon is that the end result of stewardship. And we find this in verse 21. Jesus says, his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." It's like they say, high risk, high reward. Yes, it's a high risk. Yes, it's a little frightening. But in reality, if you take advantage of the opportunities that God has given you, that God has made you a good steward over, there is so much reward, guys. It's being accepted by Jesus at the last day. I'm not talking about salvation right now. We're fully accepted by Jesus, and the robber on the cross was saved by grace and grace alone. But don't you want to glorify God in your body? Don't you want to glorify God in your life with what He has given to you so that you may come at the end of your day, fall before Him exhausted, and just hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master." Guys, these are the words that I live for. These are the words that I want to hear at the very last day, and I hope that every single one of you guys have this desire as well, to be a pleasing, good steward to God, to the Master, so that you may ultimately enter into His joy. So that's what stewardship is all about. Key points. One thing, guys, first key point, God owns everything, literally. We are stewards of what He owns, and we have the responsibility to manage it every day, keyword, every day, for His glory. Okay? Now, the next part of the sermon is going to be about money, and you guys might think, why the topic of money? Well, I'll tell you guys why often we don't talk about the topic of money. First one, it just doesn't seem really spiritual. It's like just papers and numbers and stuff like that, right? Another one is there's just so much bad press around money and churches. You know, that often the thought is like, oh, you know, you go to church, they just want your money. It's the pastors. There's always manipulating people and deceiving people and, you know, like taking the last money from people and then going and buying some private Lamborghini jet, limousine, I don't know, something really, really expensive and just totally living off people's poverty. And as preachers, we're afraid of it because we're like, I don't want to be associated to that. I don't want to look like them. And yes, it's hard, but we have to talk about it, and I'll explain why. The other reason why we don't like to talk about it is because it exposes a huge area of sin for so many of us. Especially the fact that we live in the wealthiest nation in the entire history of the human race. Yes, think about that for a second. All of humanity. There's like been so many different countries, and the country that we currently live in, America, is the most wealthiest nation ever. So if there's any nation that's going to have a problem with money, we're probably somewhere on the top of that list. So I'll tell you why we want to talk about money, though. First point, Jesus spoke more about money than about heaven and hell combined. Important, right? The Bible contains over 2,300 verses about money and possessions. It's like a lot. You can't read that in an hour if you wanted to. And so much of our life is just related to money. Everything we do, you go to work every single day. I know you don't go to work for charity work. You go to work for money. And if those of you are in school, you might not realize this yet, but you go to school for money so that you can eventually make money. Hobbies, all related to money. Status and perception. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it is related to money so much in our culture. Power is related to money. Plans, literally, if you think about your entire life, it's all related to money. Everyone carries around this little thing, and everyone carries money around in it, whether it be paper or plastic, right? It's just with us. It's around us. You walk outside and you just look at like 10 different prices. It's all related to money. Here's another interesting thing. Why we want to talk about money. Point number 4, the love of money is the root of all evil. We all heard this before, right? Now, I want you to make sure that nobody confuses this, guys. It doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. Money can't be evil by itself. It's how we treat it. That's what becomes evil or good. Crazy statistic. Number 1 reason for abortions, you guys guessed it, financial reasons. Number 1 reason for abortions is financial reasons. Number 1 reason for divorces, same exact thing. Financial hardships, difficulties. Think about all the different wars that we have and how many of them are as a result, come about as a result of greed and to desire that power over people, which comes through the form of money. And this one gets me all the time. I want you guys all to, for a second, imagine the most evil person. Just use your imagination and just imagine the most evil person right now. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I imagine the most evil person there is, I think like some dark voodoo black magic, some witch, and she's like doing some curses and spells, right? And it's like black eyeballs or something. I don't know, just something really evil. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. I know I'm crazy. But the point is, that's what I think when I think most evil. But think about this, guys. Judas betrayed Jesus Christ. And that's considered one of the greatest sins in the entire history of the entire universe. Judas betrayed Jesus Christ. One of the highest sins, one of the worst and most evil sins done. And that came about as a result of Judas's love for money. Judas didn't do magic. He didn't do black magic. He didn't do this or that. He loved money. He loved stuff. He loved the stuff that money brings. He loved the power and the status that money brings. Now think about this. The same stuff that totally possessed Judas, the same stuff that literally Satan possessed Judas through, that love of money, that money is sitting in all of our pockets today. So I want us to destroy this image of like, oh, there's really evil stuff out there. Guys, the potential for evil is with us all the time. It surrounds us. Judas fell in love with money, and Satan used that to make him commit one of the worst sins ever. And that same exact money is sitting in our pockets today, in our bank accounts. It's so close to us, and we deal with it, we touch it all the time. I'm not saying money is evil. I'm saying the love of money is evil. So just, I hope we take this seriously. I want to talk about money in the heart. Like I said, money cannot be evil or good. It's all about your heart. Where is your heart, guys, as you handle money? And in a way that's harder because It's easy to just say, oh, money is evil. I'm going to avoid money. I'm going to just go barter and trade, grow a little farm in the forest and just leave all of that. That's easy. It's also easy to say, oh, money is good. It's always a blessing from God, and you just got to make as much of it as possible. What's hard is how it is in reality, where money is not either evil or good. It's all about your heart, and you always need to watch your heart, and that requires discernment or watchfulness and wisdom to know, like, okay, where are my motives? Check yourself. Where are my motives? Am I doing this out of right motives or out of wrong motives? It's all about the heart, guys. It's not about how much money you have or how little of it you have. If somebody is poor, that doesn't automatically make them good, spiritually good. And if someone is rich, that doesn't automatically make them spiritually bad, or the other way around. And also think about this. You don't need to have money to have a problem with loving money. A lot of poor people are just all about money as well, and they're just always thinking about how, that one day when they're going to make it and they're going to live with all this money. That's the same kind of love of money as, this businessman who all he can think about working, 80 hours a week, money, 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 money. Same exact problem, two different classes of people. Just check your heart, guys. When you're making money, check your heart. Am I making it out of pride? Am I getting proud right now that I'm making more than this person or that person? Am I making money out of greed? Am I making money out of jealousy? Like, oh, one day I'll collect up enough money to be like this person. Is that what's motivating your heart? Where's your heart as you handle and deal with money? Or check your heart as you spend money. Are you spending it for pride, thinking like, oh, I'm going to, get some cool shoes or a nice car, and then everyone's going to like me, and everyone's going to respect me, and all the girls are going to look at me, I'm going to get all their attention. Where's your heart as you spend money? What are your motivations? Are you doing it for status? Are you doing it to cover up insecurities? Where's your heart, guys? Because this is important. Remember, Jesus spoke more about money than he spoke about heaven and hell combined. In reality, money is a very, very spiritual topic. It's one of the most spiritual topics that we could possibly have. You know why? Because it relates to every single part of our life. So I want us to shift our perspective on the topic of money. And I do want to finish the second part of the sermon before I move on to the third part and say that none of those motivations that I just described, pride, jealousy, fear, insecurity, status, greed, none of those motivations, when we use money with that motivation, we are being bad stewards of the money that God has entrusted us with. You guys follow me? If we have bad motivations as we handle money, we are being a bad steward. If we have pure intentions, if we come before it prayerfully, literally, like sometimes we should pray more about before we buy stuff or before we make a decision and how we're going to make money and relate it to work. We should be praying over those things. If you're approaching it that way, you automatically become a good steward of the money that God has entrusted you with. Bring it before God and say, God, how do you want me to use this money? What do you want me to do with it? And I know some of you guys are probably like scared thinking here, like, no, what if he says just give it all away? Believe me, sometimes God will say that. Usually he understands you need to eat. So just listen to the Holy Spirit and he will guide you of what you need to do with your money. Pray, pray, pray. And last part of the sermon are the practical steps. And it's really simple, but I hope at least one of them is helpful. And before I go into the practical steps, I do want to say stewardship and being a good steward of your money is not about giving 10% to God, tithing 10%, like you get a paycheck, fill it out, 10%, okay, you donate it into church, oh, you're automatically a good steward. That's not what stewardship is about. Stewardship is not about the 10% that you give. Stewardship is about the 90% that you keep. You guys get that? Stewardship is not about what you give away in terms of, maybe you give 25%. You give that away. It's not about the 75% that you keep. Sorry, it's not about the 25% you keep. It's about, you guys know what I mean, because you guys are good listeners, right? So you get what I'm saying? So shift that focus away from what you give, and you should be giving, but onto what you keep and what you have left over. And as we go into these practical steps, remember, guys, all that you have, everything, including your money, belongs to God. God has given every single penny that you have is from the Lord, and it ultimately literally belongs to Him. Just imagine like one day, like I could just come up to you and say, give me all your money, and you have no choice, and you literally just take out your wallet and you just give it all to me. Why? Because I own it. It's the same thing with God. Any single day, God could say, you know what? Your life is over today, and you lose all your money. You give away all your money, basically. God literally owns your entire life and all your money. So I think I have 6 practical steps regarding money and how to glorify God with this money, and the Bible verses that back up these steps. The first one, control your spending. Some people might have a problem with this, some people might not, but in reality, guys, uncontrollable spending is just as big of a sin as, uncontrollable anger or lust. Like, you can't control yourself, and it's the same exact thing. The question is, are you controlling your spending, or is your spending controlling you? You guys might think, well, what's the big deal? I mean, it's just money. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not doing anything gross or sinful. In reality, if you are being controlled by your spending, guys, it's literally the same exact sin as any other sin that people struggle with. And people do literally struggle with controlling their spending. And I know this from firsthand experience. It gives you like a rush. It gives you like a little high when you go out and buy something. I'm sure most of us can relate to that. It's like, oh, I need to go there and just buy that. And literally it gives you like this good feeling. Are you addicted to that good feeling? And compulsive buying is literally a disease. That's I think the American Association of Psychology, they say that compulsive buying they describe it is experienced as an irresistible, uncontrollable urge resulting in excessive, expensive, and time-consuming retail activity. I mean, they literally document and study this stuff because for most of us, we might not have compulsive buying disorder, but we might have a slight degree of it. Guys, check your hearts. Check your hearts. And I know this is such a hard topic to talk about because it really does hit close to home. And you know what? Just judging by my own self, I love my stuff. I love spending the money that I earned with my hard work and my time. I love it. But the reality is, am I glorifying God with it? That's the real question. The real question isn't, how can I think of an excuse to prove Peter wrong, that it's totally okay the way I'm using my money? Ask yourself, how can I be glorifying God? And if you can ask that and truly ask God for an answer, don't be afraid of it. If you're truly glorifying God with the way you're spending your money right now, then you shouldn't be afraid of asking God that in prayer. You guys following? And another point to make about controlling your spending, remember, it's much more important. How much you spend is much more important than how much you make. How much you spend is much more important than how much you make. For example, say there's a guy who makes $1 million a year, woo, right? But he spends $1.5 million a year. So every year he gets in debt $500,000. And then there's some person who's making $20,000 a year, but they only spend $10,000. In the end, this guy has $10,000 left in extra, and this guy has, $500,000 in debt. Who's actually in a better situation? It's more important. How much you spend is more important than how much you make. Because if you spend more than you make, you will enslave yourselves. And that's the topic number 2. Stay out of debt. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7 says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." Now, we don't have slaves nowadays, but we have people who just have to grumblingly get up, go to work, and work their job because they need to pay off certain debt. I'm not saying all debt is bad, but you guys know what I'm talking about right now. The banks, literally, if you get yourself caught up in debt, the banks own you. You need to get out of bed. You need to go do and work this, and you might hate the job, but you have no choice, and you can't get out of it because you owe that person, you owe that bank money, and you basically become a modern-day slave to that bank until you pay off your debt. Stay out of debt, guys. Control your spending. Don't buy stuff that you can't reasonably afford. If you don't have money, don't buy it. I know it's easier said than done. Don't think that I'm saying this like, oh, this is easy, just go and start doing this tomorrow. No, guys, I understand that for some of us, this is a huge struggle, and it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, and it might be a long struggle, but there's hope, because Christ can give us victory over any irresistible and uncontrollable urge. Amen? Point number 3, practical step about money. Actually, I want to bring up the verses about controlling your spending. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 17 says, whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. Whoever loves wine and oil will not be rich. Proverbs 21, verse 20 says, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. The foolish man is the person that just says, like, oh, I have this, and let me just gobble it all up. Don't be the foolish man. Control yourself. Keep what God has given to you and be wise about it. Now, I'm not saying it's evil to spend money. Point number 3 about practical steps about money. Work hard. Literally, work hard. Proverbs says, go to the ant, O sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, basically saying, without having any boss or anybody to nag the ant, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? How long will you rise from your sleep, a little slumber, a little fold into the hands to rest, and your poverty will come upon you like an armed man. If you will not work hard, guys, if you're going to be lazy, if you're going to wait until someone always forces you to do something, always nagging you to do something, you will be like this sluggard. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little fold in the hands to rest, and your poverty will come upon you suddenly. Before you know it, you're going to be enslaved to debt and banks. Work hard, guys. It's literally, the Bible says that. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4 says, a slack hand or a lazy hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent or hardworking makes rich. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 24, the hand of the hardworking will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. Do you want to be the person getting forced to work all the time? Well, just be lazy. You're still going to work. You're just going to hate it. But if you're hardworking, you can actually enjoy what you do. Point number 4, save and invest. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 25 says, the ants are a people not strong, yet they provide their food in the summer. The ants understand, like, hey, we're weak, we're small, and there's not going to be any food later. So what they do is they go and they store up food. And we know so many different animals that store up food for the future. And the Bible's saying, take this example and apply it in your life. Some of the money that you make, set it aside, save it, and invest it. Because you know what? Who knows how long you're going to be working at your job? Who knows that things are going to be exactly the same always? They never are. Always some kind of situations come up. Save money, set it aside, and invest. Guys, this is biblical. And Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. It's not even to your children, like barely, like, here you go, guys, here's some of my last money. No, he says, I have enough for my kids, and I have enough to give to my grandchildren. Have that in mind as you save and invest. Not like, I'm going to save up and then just spend it all. Think multi-generational to help out your kids, and not just your kids, but their grandkids, and heck, even great-grandkids if possible. Another point about saving and investing, if you do it, make sure you do it in many different places. Because if you put all your eggs into one basket, that basket is bound to fall one day or another, and all your eggs are going to break, and you're just going to be in a very sorry position. Make sure you guys save and invest in different places. And the crazy thing is, this is also biblical. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 1 and 2 says, cast your bread upon the waters. In other words, invest your money, for you will find it after many days, Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what disaster may happen on earth. You don't know what's going to happen. But if you put it in 7 or 8 different places, what are the chances of all of them going bad? Pretty low. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 6 says, in the morning sow your seed, in other words, invest, and at evening withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. So save and invest and make sure you do it in many different places and be wise about it. Point number 5, very important point when it comes to money, very practical, give. I know we're probably afraid of this one. Give, guys. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 says, Jesus says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And now you guys are probably thinking like, dude, you just told me to save up money and to invest, and now you're telling me don't lay up your treasures on earth? Aren't you contradicting? No, this passage isn't anti-saving money. It's anti-laying up treasure on earth. Jesus didn't say, don't have money, don't save up money on earth. He's saying don't save up treasure. What is treasure? Treasure, your heart tells you what your treasure is. Whatever you care about most, whatever you think about most, whatever keeps you up at night, and it might be a relationship, it might be money, it can be anything. That is your treasure. And Jesus is saying, don't let your treasure be here. Don't let your most valuable thing be here on this earth. Let it be in heaven. And you know what's amazing? The moment our treasure is in heaven, it frees us to give. Because we realize, it's okay, I can give this money. Because I know I'm not going to keep it. And it's not even the most valuable to me anyway. And the other amazing part is when you give, it also helps you realize that my treasure is not here on this earth. Because when you lose it, you're like, oh man, I just lost that. Well, you know what? I don't care. I've got treasures in heaven. Give, guys. Give, because it'll prevent your heart from trying to grab onto things here in this earth. And I'm not going to tell you how much to give. I'm going to leave that up to you and the Holy Spirit. I'm going to leave that up between you and God. There's no formula that, like, okay, give 17.5% if you make this much and give this much if you're that much. Talk to God, and He will tell you every time how much you need to give. And there will be different times you need to give more, different times you need to give less. I love another part about giving, Luke chapter 21. You guys remember that parable where he stood by the temple and he was watching people put money into the temple, and the rich people came up and they put in a lot of money. And then the poor widow came up and she had 2 little copper coins and like literally 2 pennies, and she put it in. And Jesus, watching all that, he said, she gave more than all of them, because that is all that she had to live on. This is a very important rule about giving, guys. Giving counts when giving hurts. You guys follow me? Giving counts when giving hurts. If you're giving something away and it doesn't hurt, well, it doesn't count. That's why Jesus said when the widow put in 2 coins, she literally, because she put in all that she had to live on, that means she would have to go around and beg people for food, beg people to have, maybe find a place for them to stay, for her to stay. Whereas the rich people, they put in that amount and it didn't affect them at all. Giving counts when giving hurts. Yes, give so that it hurts. Give and it will make a sacrifice. Yeah, you will have to tone down your lifestyle a little bit. Yeah, you might have to skip, going out and doing something on Friday night, or not buy this really cool thing that you want. But you know what? The other amazing thing about giving, Acts chapter 20, verse 35 says, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Guys, and this is true. This is so, so true. And it's always hard for me to believe this, but after I give, after I let go, it's just so amazing. I'm sure many of you guys have experienced this. It's truly more blessed to give than to receive. Because when you give away, your heart just says, you know what? I don't belong here. This is not my treasure. And yeah, that person received more and you actually lost something, but in reality, you end up being more blessed. You end up receiving more than you actually gave. Give, guys. Give and give so that it hurts, because it's more blessed to give than to receive, and it prevents us from having a treasure on this earth. And I love what one Puritan said. He said, Puritan were like these really religious people when they moved over to America. He said, God cannot change a man's heart and a man's life without changing his wallet. God cannot change somebody's life and not change the way the person uses his money and where he puts his money and what he does with his money. It's impossible because money is so close to our heart. And the last point before we wrap up the sermon, practical point about money is number 6, learn. Learn about money. Be wise about what you do with your money. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 6 says, "For by wise guidance you can wage your war, and an abundance of counselors," smart people, "there is victory." Learn. Google, literally just go on Google and type in biblical finances, biblical financial stewardship. Read about how to invest. Read about how to budget. Really huge piece of advice, guys. Learn about where your money is going. Don't just let it pollinate everywhere like a little dandelion that just sends its seeds everywhere. Be wise. Learn about money. Learn about how it works. That way you can use your money more effectively for the kingdom of God. So the 6 practical steps about money is, 1 is control your spending. 2, stay out of debt. 3, work hard. 4, save and invest. 5, learn about money. And 6, give. Give, and give, and give so that it hurts. And I just want to conclude with the fact that, guys, everything that you have has been entrusted to you. Every single thing in your life. This is crazy. And don't think of it as if like God, when he made the world, he gave you something, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to come back, and you better have made some more money for me, because I need more money, and I need more glory. And he comes back, and you didn't do anything with it, and you're caught, surprised, and he says, aha, I caught you, you didn't glorify me with what I gave you, and so I'm going to cast you into hell. No, guys, it's complete opposite. God gave us everything. We ruined it. We rebelled against him. And yet he, in his love for us, said, you know what? I'm not going to go in and destroy them. I love them. I'm going to give up my treasure, Jesus Christ, his son. I'm going to give up my treasure for these people. I'm going to give so that it hurts. And believe me, it hurt a lot. It hurt more than any of us will ever understand. Ever. I doubt we'll ever even understand it in heaven fully. God gave, and he gave so that it hurt, and it hurt a lot. And you know what? Jesus used his life. He gave up his life, and he paid for us. So now we have been bought with a price. So when you don't take advantage of the opportunities that God has given to you, you're not taking advantage of the opportunities that Jesus bought with his own blood. He bought all of that. Every single breath of yours. He bought it. He paid for it with his suffering. And if we ignore that, if we just go in and bury that into the ground, that is so disrespectful and so dishonoring of the Lord. So guys, I want us to approach this seriously, carefully, but also joyfully, because there's so much joy when it comes to being a good steward over what God has given to us. God has paid a lot. He has paid so much. And if we mirror God, if we imitate God, there is so much joy ahead of us. Amen?